Call the meeting to order and thank everyone for their attendance. Look forward to a good meeting. If everyone would stand for the invocation by the Reverend Lisa Duboulay, pastor of Christian Church United. Please come forward. And after the invocation, remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. We welcome you. Please.
Eternal Spirit of love, we look beyond our human understanding for strength and guidance as we gather at this session of the Virginia Beach. As residents of Virginia Beach, bless us as we work together to achieve the vision stated in the Community Plan for a Sustainable Future. The vision of Virginia Beach as a model community of great places, both man-made and natural, that are inherently beautiful and are accessible to all, rich in cultural, educational, and recreational opportunities, with ample choices regardless of age, physical limitations, or income, and recognizable with unique character. What a vision. We know this vision is achievable, but it takes a lot of hard work and many difficult decisions. And so we ask tonight that our elected officials be blessed with strength and wisdom, that they may know and do the things that advance the well-being of all members of our community, with a special plea that those who are most often neglected or forgotten will be remembered in all that is done. And may all those gathered here be blessed with a spirit of unity, working together for the betterment of our city and its residents. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Madam Clerk, you have the roll call.
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have a motion for the certification of the closed session?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? We'll call for the question, please.
By a vote of 9-0, with Mr. Sessoms abstaining and Mr. Dyer being absent, you have approved the...
I'm abstaining because I was not in there. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes of the informal and formal sessions of April 5th, 2016?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Oh, Bob's not here this week.
Any discussion? Call for the question, please.
All present. 10-0, with Mr. Dyer being absent.
Open a public hearing on the leases of city-owned property at 1113 Atlantic Avenue,
Your Honor, I have no speakers on any of those.
on the cafe franchises as well,
No, sir.
and on the open-air markets.
No, sir.
Now, if I could ask our wonderful Director of Finance, Patty Phillips, to come forward. Do you have the,
I think I just put a piece of paper.
hmm? Okay. Anyway, they're getting the award they get all the time. Is that it?
I just wanted to recognize that this is a significant accomplishment for City Council and for the city. This is the 35th year the city has received this. And I've always taken the attitude that you're not doing your job if you don't get it. But it does reflect the spirit of full disclosure the city has, and it also has a lot to do with our AAA rating, along with all the other good things the city does. But I wanted to recognize the city's controller, Don Barnett, and senior accountant, Kevin Kilbasa. They're here with us as part of the team, so
Well,
thank you for the
Patty, in all seriousness, I hope you know how much we appreciate you and everyone in your department.
Well,
Because, as I tell the world, we aren't going to have the best school system and the best, police department if we're not financially sound. And you and your group do a wonderful job of making sure we stay the course and do things the right way. So we thank you very sincerely for everything you all do.
thank you.
Okay, we'll now move on to the consent agenda.
All right.
see how you do with this one.
So many changes.
It's going to take a teamwork here, buddy.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of the consent agenda. First, under ordinances, resolutions, item J1, which is a resolution to authorize and direct the Beaches and Waterways Commission to study and make recommendations to City Council for a rental of homes for events in residentially zoned neighborhoods. The clerk would please note that Mrs. Wilson is voting no on that item.
Yes, Your Honor.
Item J3, which is ordinance
Not to interrupt you, but 2A is okay.
excuse me, all right, ordinances, J2, which is the ordinance to amend City Code, A, Section 23.22.1, Ray possessing an open container of alcohol in a public place. Item J3, an ordinance to authorize the city manager to execute a lease with Back Bay Wildfowl Gill, Inc. for city-owned property at 1113 Atlantic Avenue in the Beach District. J4, ordinances granting franchise agreements. A, open-air cafes in the resort area, repeal Bourbon and Burgers, Atlantic Avenue Side Street Cafe, Cancun Fiesta, Atlantic Avenue Sidewalk Cafe, Giovanni's Atlantic Avenue Sidewalk Cafe, Lighthouse Boardwalk Cafe, North Beach Boardwalk Cafe, Yacht Club Boardwalk Cafe, Chicks Boardwalk Cafe. Item, and for deferral to May the 3rd, item B is open markets in the public right-of-way, Old Beach Farmers Market at 620 19th Street, Old Beach Art Market at 620 19th Street, and Old Beach Green Market at 620 19th Street. For approval, J5, which is ordinances to extend the dates for satisfying conditions in the matters of closing. A, an unimproved right-of-way known as Scott Ben Lane. And B,
Vice Mayor Jones?
yes,
I'm sorry, I thought item B, 4B was going to be deferred.
It did.
Deferred, okay, excuse me.
Yeah.
Got it.
B, unimproved portions of Singleton Way, formerly Prince Sand Road. That's double I, South Witch Duck Road, formerly Kempsville Road, triple I, Prince Sand Road, relocated adjacent to the northeast and southeast sides of Parcel D. J6, ordinance to authorize temporary encroachments into portions of city-owned property. A, Lake Joyce back of 4449 Lee Avenue, pier and slope revetment. B, Lake Joyce back of 4453 Lee Avenue, boat ramp and slope revetment. J7, ordinance to appropriate a $380,325 fund balance of the federal and state seized asset fund to the police for equipment and software licenses. 7B, $176,442 in state revenue, and transfer $132,342 from the general contingencies to the general registrar for the June Republican primary election. J8, ordinances to accept and appropriate A, $844,447 from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to citywide sea level rise recurrent flooding analysis. A8B, $53,965 from Virginia Department of Health, $19,877 from EMS training classes revenue, and $36,460 from prepayments for standby duty at special events to EMS equipment and medical supplies. And J9, ordinance to transfer $400,000 from general fund neighborhood dredging reserve to beach replenishment and authorize an emergency beach replenishment at Cape Henry Beach.
Open a public hearing on planning.
Under planning for consent, item K1, which is Tattoo Skills 2 LLC, Damnick Square LLC, in the Beach District. K2, application of Stephanie L. Weeks in the Centerville District. 3, the application of Bianca Evans and Neho in the Kempsville District. 4, the application of Pembroke Square Associates LLC in the Bayside District. And item 7, which is the City of Virginia Beach, an ordinance to amend city zoning ordinance, CZO sign regulations. I amend sections 210 through 218, 234, 303, 403, 501, 504, 605, 705, 805, 901, 905, 1001, 1005, 1503, 1533, and 2210, double I, amend Oceanfront Resort District Section 6.3, triple I, add section 210.01, rate general regulations. 4, Roman numeral 4, repeal sections 211.1, 212.1, and 212.2. B, an ordinance to amend the city zoning ordinance, CZO sections 111, 401, 501, 801, 901, 101, 1110, 1125, 1421, and Oceanfront Resort District, section 5.2, rate daycare centers and family daycare homes, an ordinance to amend and reordain section 506 of the city zoning ordinance, adding new figure 2 roof dormer diagram. So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Have a motion to have a second.
I have just one quick comment, if I could, Mr. Mayor, on the open markets that we deferred today. One of the reasons we're deferring is there was a little bit of confusion in terms of the way the agenda's written. It actually read that we were going to move the farmer's market, which is not, as we know, not the case.
Right.
So when this gets re-advertised for vote on the 3rd of May, if we can actually clean that up so that the public knows.
Have you made a note of that, Ruth? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call for the question, please.
I voted for 10 to 0.
Hey,
You
help me,
have
Mr.
approved
Vice
the
Mayor. I
items
think
read
I'll
for the
get
Vice
through here.
Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Moss asked that we pull items 2, B, and C that were on consent, but in addition, on item B, 2B, the resort permit area parking, we do have 2 speakers. I'm going to let them speak first, but they were fine with consent, but we're going to speak later. So if you could call the speakers on 2B, please.
Yes, sir. Barbara Clark. 3 minutes, Your Honor.
All speakers will be permitted 3 minutes. Barbara, we welcome you. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Sessoms, members of City Council. My name is Barbara Clark, and I am president of the Resort Beach Civic League, which includes the established resort neighborhoods of Old Beach, Lakewood, and Pinewood. Council-adopted plans indicate stable residential neighborhoods are vital to the success of our first-class year-round destination resort. During our April 12, 2016 membership meeting, we adopted our position on resort area, new and redevelopment projects, which is paraphrased as follows. The Resort Beach Civic League is in favor of quality redevelopment that provides opportunity for growth in and the improvement of the resort area while respecting our residential neighborhoods. Toward this end, we request the implementation of a comprehensive parking plan for resort area employees, patrons, and visitors that does not depend on our neighborhoods. As stated in the 2005 Council-adopted Oceanfront Resort Area Plan, due to a lack of available parking for public purposes, the streets of adjacent neighborhoods have served to their detriment as overflow parking for oceanfront visitors. Accordingly, continued attention should be given to properly controlling on-street parking in neighborhoods adjacent to the resort area. We thank Councilmember John Earn and city staff for implementing changes to allow employees to park in some city lots and garages Monday through Thursday. A number of proposed projects will bring thousands of people to the oceanfront and intense increases in parking demand, which will inundate the resort neighborhoods. Public parking, which is being offered as part of some of these projects, will be entirely inadequate. When the Residential Permit Parking Program, RPP, was adopted in the early 1990s, employee parking in this area was allowed on a short-term temporary basis to allow the businesses time to make arrangements for their employee parking outside of the resort neighborhoods. Instead, the number of employee passes increases each year and no limit has been set. The first goal of the 2012 council-adopted resolution for a parking strategy is to protect established residential neighborhoods by reducing or removing on-street parking pressures created by public beach use and the need for business employing parking. During the 2011 summer season, around 1,400 employee passes were issued. Contrary to council's goal, last season that number had jumped to more than 1,600. Anyone can park in the RPP during the day, which results in a stressful competitive environment. We ask for these requests to be included. Limit the number of employee passes for the residential permit parking program to 1,600. Remove business employee parking by April 1, 2018 from the neighborhoods. Move the start time to 5 p.m. from 8 p.m. to allow us to find parking near our homes after work, which corresponds with the resident discount to $3 at municipal lots and garages after 5. Analyze traffic calming measures for the Lakewood neighborhood. We thank you for the opportunity to provide our recommendations concerning this difficult situation and look forward to relief from overflow parking in our neighborhoods.
We thank you very much for coming down, Barbara.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Bill Gumbrell.
Bill, we welcome you.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad to be on the consent agenda. The Business Association of the Oceanfront, the Virginia Beach Restaurant Association, supports the initiative that Mr. Earn sponsored today, and we wanted to come and tell you thank you for voting yes for it, and also to tell you that we do have some concerns about the parking program that Mrs. Clark spoke to you about, and think that the city is in good shape if they include everybody in those conversations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Mr. Moss, you just had a minor change on this, if I recall.
That is correct.
Recommend.
And I applaud John for moving, it was just under, I'll tell you which line number it is. It's on line number 16 and 17. It says, "To set an amount to be determined by the city manager as designee." I think city council should always retain the power to set fees and things, and I think that should be the city council and not delegated to the city manager. And I would, if it was a friendly amendment, I'd like to see that retained by the city council, as we do for all fees and permits.
Mr. Earn.
Well, certainly, I wish you would have spoken to me about it before, Mr. Moss, but the reason I had included that is that normally we set those fees as a course of the budget cycle, and as you well know, that starts on July 1st. Well, that is an absolute terrible time to implement any type of change in this program mid-season. And so the reason that I asked for the ordinance to be drawn up as it's presented here is that it is clearly my intent to follow Mr. Gambrell and Ms. Clark's advice and reconvene the parking committee that we had established before, that we did several years of hard work to relook at all of these fees and what have you. And so this actually would allow for that, if there was a decision that came out of that committee and a recommendation, that the city manager would be able to act on that, because it takes an awful lot of time for us to go from when that is approved to when it's implemented. And we actually have had some of these approvals that are being enacted this year were actually enacted 2 years ago, and because of the fact that it came off cycle and it took us the time to actually get the technology and the other programs in place to implement those, meant that it had a late start. So that was a very specific reason that I had introduced the ordinance as it is.
On all due respect to my colleague, we got this notice last week and we're voting on it this week. I don't think the process by which this council votes is an impediment to timely action, but if you're staying with this, I know how I'll be voting, but thank you.
Okay, any other questions? We'll call for the question on that, please. Oh, wait a minute. How about a motion?
I'd make a motion that we approve ordinance 2B, sir.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Call for the question, please.
Let it be known that my no vote is not to the amount, but to the delegation of raising taxes and taking our fees on people without council actively voting.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Moss, we pulled item 2C at
Right.
your request.
Yes, this is dealing with this section. As you noticed, that there was, in the comment section from the city attorney, that mentioned that they were changing the delegation from the directly, specifically the Public Works Director, to the city manager or his designee. And I have no problem with that designation, but what the ordinance doesn't include is that there's not a prescribed requirement as to how that designation must be made. It has been my experience in working with the federal government that anytime that designation of authority is granted, there is always a designation letter in writing which specifies both the scope and the duties that goes with that designation, and it's always available for public review, and it provides an audit trail as to who's accountable. And in the event that the duties or the authorities are exceeded, there's no doubt as to determination of what the direction in the delegation was. I know that it has been the practice, I talked to the city attorney today, that generally a letter is written, but there is no prescription that one be written or where it is retained and available to the public. And I think that should be done. It could be done by a resolution. It could be done by this body saying that's what they'd like to see happen. And I'm sure the city manager would do that. But I think absent that, we haven't met our due diligence to be accountable to the public.
Mark, you've been working diligently on what's been presented to us. What would your recommendation be there?
I can tell you, as I told Mr. Moss earlier, that it was staff's intention to have a written delegation. There is nothing, Mr. Moss is correct, there is nothing in there that requires it. We can add it, but what I would suggest is if that's council's direction, tell us to draft a resolution that just says that, and we'll bring it back to you at the next meeting.
Does anyone object to that? Why don't you do that then? Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
happy to do it.
I move its adoption.
What?
I move its adoption.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call for the question, please. We're doing better than last week. Okay.
Mr. Ern, what was your vote?
I did.
All right, council, the next one is item number 5, Ashton Builders, Inc., and estate of Bertha H. Caffey, estate of Bertha H. Caffey, Thomas Clay Caffey, Jackie Welton Davis, Mary Melissa Caffey Peacock, Jameson Smith Sr. If the applicant could come forward, this was placed on consent, but we wanted to get some clarification from, Mrs. Henley need to get some clarification.
I will be happy to.
Mrs. Henley.
Well, he's going to talk, he knows the issues that the neighborhood has been very concerned about, and he wants to address those.
I'll be happy to, and I'll make this as brief as possible, and if I leave anything out, Ms. Henley, please do not hesitate to bring it up. First, though, I wanted to take just a second to thank Mr. Frank Wetmore, who's the president of the Prince Anne Quarter Civic League, who is here this evening, and all the residents at Prince Anne Quarter who participated in quite a number of meetings that we've had with them, and my clients who are here tonight have had with them over many, many months. So I want to thank them publicly for their, sacrifice of their time. The issue that has been primary of late has been the question of stormwater drainage. And by city ordinance, the development of this property cannot result, the property that's before you, the almost 9 acres that are before you, cannot result in any of the developed property putting any of its stormwater runoff onto the adjacent lots in Princess Anne Quarter or in any other adjacent lot for that matter. And at no point in time has the applicant ever suggested or intimated in any way that any of our stormwater was going to be routed into a 15-foot public drainage easement that exists on the back of the lots that adjoin us on our western boundary within Princess Anne Quarter. That public drainage easement is for their use. We are not going to use it in any way, shape, or form. Unlike your typical development rezoning, where the applicant doesn't spend the tens of thousands of dollars on a detailed topographic survey and detailed stormwater engineering plans until after the zoning is approved. In this case, we've already done that, in part because it's taken quite a while dealing with the public utility sewer issue. So we went ahead and did that part of this, and we can say absolutely unequivocally, without any hesitation or doubt, that the stormwater drainage plans for these 16 lots in this addition really to Princess Anne Quarter, as well as the 2 existing lots on Princess Anne Road, will not place any stormwater whatsoever on any adjoining lots to this property. All of the stormwater will be handled on-site into the BMP at the rear in the 3.35 acres we're dedicating to the city, or onto Princess Anne Road into the public system after they've been captured and handled on site. So there will be no stormwater whatsoever that will go onto any of our adjacent properties, and I think everyone's happy about, and I want to express appreciation for Mr. Leahy's folks in public utilities. Of course, I guess he's up upstairs now, for their work with us with regard to the vacuum system and the additional line that will help not only this development, but the folks in Prince Anne Quarter and others with that system that was overburdened and not functioning as it needed to. So those are the main issues. I think everything else, the lots are the same size, the proffers are the same, and the values of the home should be, $500,000 and above. So I don't
Mrs.
think.
Finley?
Well, I appreciate for you, your willingness to say all these things, so it's a
doubt.
part of the public record, and
Yes, ma'am.
we're going to really work on that.
We don't expect any approvals of the subdivision plans, the subdivision construction plans, if they're not consistent with the fact that we're not putting any water on any of our neighbors.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I will just make some comments, because I've been very much concerned about this property, because I know that it's pretty low, as is so much of the property in the southern part of the city. And the concern that I have when the people who are in Princess Anne Quarters talk about the fact that they already have standing water and drainage and concern, that gives me concern. And I know that our folks from Public Works I hope they did, follow through, have talked with the folks in the neighborhood, and we'll try to see if there are any things that we need to be doing to make certain that they don't have any worse issue than they have, simply because of some of the things that just really can't be corrected, like elevation and high water table. And so I think we'll follow through on that. But as far as whether this 16 lots will exacerbate the problem, as Mr. Burdon has stated, our folks have looked at the plan very thoroughly and will look at it as it goes through the site development process to make certain that the drainage from this property does not flow over onto the people in Princess Anne Quarters. They also have been very concerned that the BMP on this particular property, which will become city property, will not be treated for mosquitoes. But I hope that the fact that the drainage that's on that property now, which tends to be standing water, the fact that it's going to have a better drainage will help exacerbate that situation. But another concern that they expressed to me when I met with the community, and I certainly have, given the fact that this property is creeping closer to the waterway and the swamp, there's another property on the east of this that is also potentially to be developed. And I certainly don't give any indication that I will look favorably on that project just because I have intend to support this one. This one is borderline, and that one might be on the other side of the fence. But I'm a bit.
We got a warning here.
I'm a bit concerned that, in doing the sewer utility project, that maybe the city has given the impression, when we have statements like there to be 3 partners, the city, because of Princess Anne Quarters already being over capacity there, and then this development, and then allowing for this next one to also have capacity. I don't think I wouldn't want anyone to take it as a given that they're going to get 35 lots on that property or any such thing. So I just want to kind of give that fair warning. And certainly, that particular property would not have traffic ingress and egress through Princess Anne Quarters as this 16 lots do. These 16 lots, I think the very fact that the the street in Princess Anne Quarters was stubbed off with the intention of incorporating this property is quite a different situation from that other property. So just to put that on the record as well, I do have a lot of concerns. I have a lot of concerns because of the poor drainage in this area, period. I mean, historically, it's been very wet. It will continue to be wet. It's not going to be high sandy ground no matter what we do. And I understand and fully appreciate the drainage issues, and I have every confidence that our staff is going to make certain that when this site plan is finally approved and everything is given the go-ahead to build, that we're going to be assuring that the drainage from this property does not exacerbate the problems on Princess Anne Quarters. With all of that said, I will move approval of this application.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? I'll call for the question, please.
By a vote of 9-0, Mr. Davenport abstaining, you have approved the item with the condition.
We'll now move to item number 6, Titan Meyer Development LLC, KHJ LLC, Best P. Decker, Monica Johnson, Talmadge C. Hunt Jr., Revocable Living Trust. If the applicant could come forward, Amelia,
R.J. Nutter's representing the applicant.
there's one person to speak against. Can we hear that first? Because I understand the
Yes.
Civic League's here to support this.
Okay.
If we could have the speaker to come, that wanted to speak against it, please.
James Stolner.
We welcome you, sir.
My name is James Solner, resident of Virginia Beach for 50 years and at Connie Lane for the last 25. In January, I believe, they made a proposal of development. Was unaware until it was posted on the orange sign. Enacting people with a Civic League. I have to start right there. It's very, I wasn't aware of a lot of stuff, and there's 3 people that pretty much are the Civic League. It's defunct. I have some issues that we spoke with. The biggest thing is I have.
Just call me, just tell us what your issues are, is what I'd ask you, please.
30 different residences I went through my area. 35 houses, 2-story houses, single-family condos within our community, which is Newsom Farm. I think it was enacted up, historic black neighborhood in 1991. I'd love to see the area develop, but they're changing it over to apartment. Single family could put 35 2-story in there. I think on my street there's only 4 2-story houses. A couple of the residences there, privacy, I guess, whatnot. I know they've done a lot of work. The builder and Mr. Nutter, I spoke with him. What I would love to see, that it's mostly all wooded there. They're going to take every tree. There's not much for any kind of good trees in there. It's all gum balls. On the proffered plan there are several trees that that show up there. I understand that planting, there's a certain amount of trees that have to be in there. I think when you go into that comprehensive plan, tree tops. I mean, I hate to see any trees go. I'm not a tree hugger, but I understand they're not. When you go into a place like that, you're going to have to take everything out to put your infrastructure in, and then get back out within 2.5 years. We're going to need some type of buffer between our neighborhood established. My lot's like 1,700 or 17,000 square feet. Most of these houses, you could put like 8 of them on my land. It's just a change, and I understand it's a transition area. Someone on the planning commission says, well, it looks nice when you're going down the road. Well, if you turn in and try and turn around, there's a problem. Just very, very tight in there. When you do go to vote, just keep in mind that this community is being put within a community, which does front Newtown Road, which is at capacity now. All your ingress and traffic is going to be coming by my house, going out the other way, because you can't get out at Newtown Road in the evening. So The biggest thing is I live on the backside is Baker Extension, and developers have already been on the backside of my property talking, say, I'm coming through there, and I just don't want this to set precedent that everything that's zoned R75 will go to apartments, and I'll be looking at 3-story apartments. They have planning up there, Boyd Homes at Shopping Center right around the corner. That's a big development. We can bring in a lot of people into our school systems there, which I won't get into that, but that area is struggling. And, you know, when you talk about making a community that we can grow up in and stay in, it's really, really hard when you start putting those different kinds of homes all together. And I'm sort of feeling encroached, and that's the way these 30 other people feel as well in there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for coming down, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Nutter, can you respond to those comments, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you. For the record, my name's R.J. Nutter. I'm an attorney representing the applicant. And with me, I will let Mr. Kirkley, who's here tonight with the Civic League, along with President Linda Carrington, address some of those questions for you. But I did want to let you know that we worked very hard with the Civic League here months before this vote. We actually met with the Civic League on the first plan in November of last year. They asked us to change the plan. We did, and met with them again in January. Their board, along with, I might add, Dr. Ross Hammond, was able to be present at that meeting. The board said they endorsed the plan, would take it to their full meeting at the next regular scheduled meeting. They did in January. We were on the Planning Commission agenda in March. Mr. Solar appeared, so we agreed to have another meeting, as Dr. Ross Hammond knows, just last week. And we went and answered questions for over an hour and a half. And I believe with very few exceptions, the neighborhood was overwhelmingly in support of this application. So I did want to let you know some great things about it. Frankly, it's a lower density than a project this council approved 3 years ago just down the street. That was a 10.7 units per acre. This is 7.9 units per acre. It has twice as much open space. The units have all garages where the others did not. These units have brick and stone exterior features. The others did not. These selling prices will be from $280,000 to $325,000, which will be approximately anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 more than the homes spread out the street. So we really think we've done a really good job working with the neighborhood. Your staff recommends approval. The Planning Commission recommended approval.
You mentioned something about a buffer.
Yes.
Can you show
Sure.
the location of his house and where you're going to
Sure.
be building, please?
And I apologize, I may have to ask him where he lives, but I understand he lives toward the back, toward the Baker Road section.
Okay.
This is up in the, this is Newtown Road, we're right up on the front, which is part of the reason why staff recommended approval, because they felt that they wanted a higher density product between the established neighborhood in the rear and all the corridor traffic and commercial action out along Newtown Road.
Ask him, sir, can you show us where you live?
Sure.
They have one on the plan there, but I'm not on it as well. It's a quarter mile down the street there, probably 12 houses down.
Oh, so you're a quarter mile down from it?
Well, yeah, but there's only 21 houses on that street.
Okay, well, I was just trying to understand a buffer. Never mind. Okay, thank you.
That's okay, it's my pleasure, but we did tell them the plan is proffered. There was some confusion that staff helped correct, which because we were using apartment zoning with PDH over 2, they thought we could convert it to apartments, and staff correctly pointed out to them that's not the case. What you approve is the conditional rezoning for 35 single-family detached homes. So we've tried very hard to work with everybody. We've been through multiple meetings with the Civic League months ahead of this meeting. So I think you'll find with very few exceptions, there's a large amount of support for this application.
Thank you.
Yes.
Amelia?
Okay, and I would also like, I don't know if Mr. Kirk is here or Ms. Carrington, if you stand for a minute. Are you here? Just to stand. These are president and vice president of that Civic League, and there are more than 3 or 4 good group that came out for meetings, and the first time I met with them, they said we did not want apartments, we want separate detached homes. So I went and I met with their attorney, told him their views, and he and the developers came and met with them, completely changed the whole plan, moved from the huge density, bringing it down to about, 7.9 units to 35. And they're pretty attractive looking homes, and these people have been living there for a long time, and they know, and they wanted something that they could look at with pride. I also got to hear what you have to say as well. But I think at this point, you all have done the year's man work, and I'm going to ask council to move for approval.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
John had a comment,
I
please.
did for Mr., if I could, please, it's just a friendly question. On proffer number 4, I don't know if you have those in front of you or not. It reads, "The prominent architectural feature on the front facade is the garage," which I think you know the market conditions. Here's the part that I want to make sure we understand. It then goes on to say, and I guess this, "The staff prefers an element such as a front porch as the prominent architectural feature on the front facade rather than the garage." I think the developer should be allowed to decide, and I don't think that that statement should have any bearing on that development. And he's got a tight consideration, so I want to just make sure that we all understand that that's just an editorial comment by staff, and that's not leverage on the developer to do something that he otherwise wouldn't do.
Yeah, that is the case, but they did ask us, and unfortunately, we couldn't, because we had to do more changes to these homes you can imagine.
Right, I saw through all of it, but I saw it here in writing, I just want to make sure that we all walk away here with the same understanding.
Very
Thank you very
good.
much.
Very good, Mr.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the question, please.
I voted 9-0 with Mr. Wood abstaining. Mr. Dyer absent. You have approved the application.
I'll now move to appointments, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate to the Arts and Humanities Commission Carolyn S. Garrett, Martha McLeese, and Laura A. Ewan. To the Bayfront Advisory Commission, Joseph Beauvais and Cal Kassir. To the Beaches and Waterways Advisory Commission, Michael L. Clark, Beach Representative, Thomas E. Frame at large, and William A. Hurst at large. To the Bikeways and Trails Advisory Committee, Richard M. Hildreth, Daniel A. Coach, and Howard Ned Coons. To the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, Louis R. Jones, John D. Moss, Amelia Ross Hammond, and John E. Earn. To the Minority Business Council, Linda M. Bright, Emma Ian Into Garrier, and Francisca Harrison. To the Planning Commission, Bayside seat, to fill the unexpired term of Ross Rockwell, David Redmond. To the Social Services Board, Martha McLeese. And to the Transportation District Commission, Hampton Roads, John E. Earn.
Do I hear any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll call for the question, please.
By a vote of 10-0, you have approved those appointed by the...
Is there any unfinished business? Is there any new business? Thank you all for your